This really is a moral disgrace. This week, the highest court on earth found that the case against Israel for genocide was plausible and that the state should be placed on trial to ascertain whether genocide was taking place. Now, Israel and its main cheerleaders have howled with outrage. How dare you accuse Israel of genocide and us of facilitating it? And then the very next day, the US and Britain cut funding for the UN agency charged with looking after Palestinian refugees, just as Gaza is rendered inhospitable by mass destruction, hunger, thirst, and the collapse of medical care. So here's what's happened. Israel has accused 12 employees of the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian Refugees in the Near East, or UNRWA for short, of involvement in the 7th of October attacks. That's now led the US, the UK, Italy, Canada, and Australia, and counting, to suspend funding for UNRWA. Well, first of all, that's awfully convenient timing, isn't it? The International Court of Justice puts the state of Israel on trial for genocide, and then suddenly we get these allegations announced by Israel. And all the attention becomes about that. What a massive coincidence. Immediately all discussion ends about the ICJ, the Western media abandon all discussion about the ICJ, not that there was much in the first place, and there was so much misinformation about it, and indeed any discussion about the humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza and the mass slaughter of tens of thousands of Palestinians, that ends too. It's no longer Israel in the dock. The story then becomes Israel, with the connivance of its allies, putting the UN in the dock instead. British newspapers have given the ICJ ruling embarrassingly little coverage, as I say. Do you know what page the ruling was in the Times newspaper? Guess, go on. Page 42. And furthermore, rather than the discussion being about the ongoing massacre taking place every single day in Gaza, that is well over 30 October the 7th, or proportionate to population size, approaching 130 October 7th have now hit Gaza. Instead, the focus goes back to the undoubted horrors which were committed on October 7th. The here and now, which we can do something about, is once again intentionally forgotten. Now, in terms of the substance of these allegations, we are told that 12 UNRWA employees were involved, as I say, in the October 7th attacks. Guess how many Palestinian employees of UNRWA there are in Gaza alone? Go on. Again, guess. 13,000. That's how many. So, do you know what the percentage of UNRWA employees therefore accused of involvement in October the 7th is? 0.092%. So all these Western states have cut off funding for the one agency dedicated to the welfare of Palestinians, clearly more important than ever, as Gaza descends into hell, because of allegations involving 0.092% of the UNRWA in Gaza staff members. Now, these are allegations, they're unproven allegations. Maybe they're true, maybe they're not. What we know is they come from the Israeli authorities, who have a track record of lying through their teeth. Now, that's not unique to Israel. States which engage in massive war crimes, as they seek to deflect attention from those war crimes, tend to behave like this. The Russian state does the same thing. So if the Russian authorities made this sort of accusation, would you just automatically trust what they say? Now, we're told that this comes from the Shin Bet, that is Israel's military intelligence, based on interrogations with Palestinian detainees. Interrogations. Well, there's massive evidence that Shin Bet used torture in such interrogations, and that's before the 7th of October, when Israel magnified its brutal methods to the nth degree. Indeed, as the ICJ ruling noted, the Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, soon after the 7th of October attack, declared all restraints, all restrictions had been lifted from the Israeli armed forces. Now, according to the principle of natural justice, no one should be condemned unheard. The accused have the right to a fair hearing, and we could go on. Now, there are clearly no principles of natural justice being observed here, are they? Where are they? Indeed, a panicked UNRWA have just booted these employees. Surely the correct approach would be to suspend pending investigation and emphasise that these are allegations. In any case, if they are guilty, which no justice process has established, what on earth are we saying here? That if an institution has 0.096% of its staff accused of crimes, then we suspend funding to the entire organisation. It's a statement of the obvious that there are NHS employees who've committed terrible crimes. It is a very large organisation after all. I mean, we could go through some of them. Harold Shipman, he was a serial killer. Do we end all funding to the National Health Service as a consequence? I'm actually getting the maths wrong here, by the way, because as I understand it, obviously, funding has been suspended for the entire UNRWA organisation, which doesn't just operate in Gaza. It operates everywhere Palestinians were forced to flee. So as well as Gaza, that's Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, and the West Bank, including East Jerusalem. In total, it has 30,000 employees. So that means 0.04% of its staff have been accused of unspecified and unproven crimes related to 7th of October, and that's the basis for pulling the plug everywhere. Let's just say what it is. Let's speak as we should always speak, which is the truth. This is depraved. I'd actually be very interested to know the legality of this. Article 33 of the Geneva Convention prohibits the collective punishment of civilians. Now, shutting down funding for the agency charged with the welfare of refugees at the exact moment there was a catastrophic humanitarian situation in Gaza, with 80% of the world's hungriest people in Gaza, the healthcare system essentially destroyed, lack of access to water, to shelter, virtually the entire population displaced. What does that mean in practice when you clobber the agency charged with looking after them? Bearing in mind UNRWA is also the biggest employer in Gaza, but has a critical role in distributing humanitarian aid and all the rest. It will impose a death sentence on many innocent Palestinians, who are thus collectively punished for the alleged and actually unspecified crimes committed by a total of 12 employees. It's even worse. The ICJ has just ruled that Israel must ensure humanitarian access to the population of Gaza. Well, how's that going to happen exactly if the UN Refugee Agency for Palestinians in Gaza is financially throttled by Western states? Now, the US human rights lawyer and professor of international law, Francis Boyle, who is counsel for Bosnia and Herzegovina and filed their own genocide case at the ICJ, says that it's no longer the case of these states aiding and abetting Israeli genocide against the Palestinians in violation of the Geneva Convention Article 3E, criminalising complicity in genocide. These states are now also directly violating Genocide Convention Article 2C by themselves, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part. So a preeminent lawyer who led a successful genocide case at the ICJ now says, after the ICJ declared Israel is plausibly committing genocide, by defunding the UN's Palestinian Refugee Agency at the worst possible moment, is collectively punishing Palestinians and themselves violating their own obligations under the 1948 Genocide Convention. Now consider Norway's response by way of contrast. They declare the situation in Gaza is catastrophic, and UNRWA is the most important humanitarian organisation there. Norway continues our support for the Palestinian people through UNRWA. International support for Palestine is needed now more than ever. Reports that UNRWA staff were involved in the attacks on Israel on 7th of October are deeply disturbing and, if true, completely unacceptable. Norway welcomes UNRWA's investigation into the matter. We expect full transparency. We need to distinguish between what individuals may have done and what UNRWA stands for. The organisation's tens of thousands of employees in Gaza, the West Bank and the region are playing a crucial role in distributing aid, saving lives and safeguarding basic needs and rights. And by the way, Norway is deeply involved in UNRWA and therefore has a much better handle on how that organisation works than most. Obviously the right approach, morally, legally, it's basic common sense. Similarly, Michael Martin, the Irish Foreign Minister, backs the UN's action in investigating serious allegations and declares there's no plan by Ireland to suspend funding for UNRWA's vital Gaza work, as he says. As he notes, UNRWA's 13,000 employees, he means in Gaza, provide life-saving assistance to 2.3 million people and at incredible personal cost, with over 100 staff killed in the last 4 months. Ireland provided UNRWA 18 million euros in 2023 and will continue our support in 2024. Indeed, he raises a key point here. Israel is responsible for the biggest killing of UN workers in such a short space of time in the entire history of the United Nations. Not only will this mean Israel will claim justification for that mass slaughter, it puts a target on the back of other UNRWA workers, meaning Israel will now be emboldened to kill other aid agencies. We'll just keep saying that they're terrorists. Now, let's just also answer this. If the alleged and unspecified and unproven crimes of 12 employees is enough to shut down funding for an organisation employing 30,000 people, then why isn't the ICJ declaring there's a plausible case for Israel to answer committing genocide enough for Western states, not enough for Western states to cease arms sales to Israel as well as diplomatic and political support? That double standard is off the charts. I should also note that the ICJ themselves made clear in their judgment that they trust the UNRWA. They kept referring to UNRWA. It's obviously clear here that there is retribution against the United Nations because of the ICJ ruling, ICJ being the UN court, and to bury the ICJ ruling by instead focusing on a story intended to put Israel's critics on the defensive. This is another sordid chapter of how Israel is not only committing one of the great crimes of our age, it's doing so with the direct complicity and connivance of Western governments. The least we can do is to donate to UNRWA. I'll include the link to do so in the video description, and when I publish it on other platforms, I'll post a link alongside it. Make sure you share the link around. I've donated, probably going to donate again tomorrow. Our Western governments may have abandoned the Palestinian people, but it doesn't mean we have to as well. It is crucial that we do everything we can within our power to stand with the Palestinian people at their darkest moment. The least we can do, if we can afford to do so, is spare some money for this organisation as Western states throttle it when there is an alleged genocide taking place against the Palestinian people in Gaza. Please like and subscribe. Do keep the show on the road at patreon.com/RogerS84. Share this video, it's important. I'll speak to you soon.